Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson, the former WWE Raw Tag Team Champions, look to be set for Impact Wrestling, with a deal between the two parties being said to be, quote, pretty much a done deal, end quote. Now, reports have surfaced over the weekend that Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson have received, quote, lucrative, end quote, offers from Impact Wrestling to persuade the former WWE Raw Tag Team Champions to join the promotion. Now, Gary Cassidy at Sportskeeda, once again, if you don't follow Gary, make sure you do. He's dropping exclusives all the time, so be sure to follow him at Wrestling Gary on Twitter, or you can find him on the Sportskeeda website. Gary is reporting that Impact Wrestling's signing of Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson is, quote, pretty much a done deal, end quote. It has even been said that content for use on Impact Plus, the promotion's on-demand streaming service, has already been recorded. Ryan Satin from Pro Wrestling Sheet doubled down on these reports as he reported over the weekend that Gallows and Anderson had been offered, quote, incredibly strong deals, end quote, by Impact Wrestling. These deals would allow the tag team to work in New Japan Pro Wrestling once it's possible after the current COVID-19 pandemic subsides and travel between countries is made much easier. Gary Cassidy is also reporting that, quote, upcoming shows, end quote, have already been recorded regarding Talk and Shop Mania, which is Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson's video podcast as a side promotion, with footage also being recorded for Impact Plus, both of which are scheduled to air in July. Now, whilst it's pretty much a done deal, that doesn't mean it's exactly a done deal. And the reason as to why is because Gallows and Anderson are yet to officially sign with Impact Wrestling. Their deals have yet to be signed. Pen has officially yet to be put to paper. As for a potential debut day for the Bullet Club members, the former Bullet Club members, I should say, this is likely to take place on or after July 18, 2020. Of course, this is the date that Gallows and Anderson's WWE non-compete clauses expire, or just before, after being released in April of this year after WrestleMania. July 18th, does that date ring a bell? Well, it should, of course, because July 18 is the date of Impact Wrestling's Slammiversary pay-per-view event. The promotion has been teasing the debut of released WWE stars such as the former Impact Wrestling World Champion EC3 for the event. EC3's music, of course, actually played a couple of weeks ago on Impact Wrestling after TNA World Champion Moose won a match. So it's likely we could see Gallows and Anderson make their debuts at the event along with the likes of EC3. Now, it's a very interesting one. I think this is a huge get for Impact Wrestling, regardless of the reports of the likes of Tessa Blanchard and others leaving the company last week. Impact Wrestling for me is kind of on a roll, actually, and it's probably the best it's been for a very, very long time. You've got to think of the tainted legacy that Impact Wrestling has, going back to the Dixie Carter, Vince Russo, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff years. Now, I'll be totally honest. Back in the day, around from about 2006 to about 2013, 2014, I used to watch Impact Wrestling, TNA as it was at the time, all the time over here in the UK. Impact Wrestling actually had a really, really good TV deal over here in the UK. They aired on Challenge TV on Sunday nights, and their pay-per-view airs in midweek on Challenge TV. Now, the people outside of the UK may not realise that to air on Challenge TV over here is a pretty damn good deal for Impact Wrestling. The reason as to why is it's on Freeview television, so you don't have to pay to get Challenge TV. Anyone with a cable to plug into the back of their TV, an aerial, can get Freeview TV. So it's a lot easier to access than the likes of Sky Sports or BT Sport that WWE was on at the time, or is now on BT Sport. That's cable, that's satellite providers, that's subscription television. Challenge TV was Freeview over here, free to air, which meant a lot of people watched Impact Wrestling back in the day over here in the UK. In fact, Impact Wrestling would regularly, pretty much every week, draw in more viewers than Monday Night Raw or SmackDown or NXT or whatever here in the UK. So it was very, very popular over here in the UK, to the point every time that Impact Wrestling came over to do a tour here in the UK, it would sell out every time. Impact Wrestling would sell out the Hydro in Glasgow, it would sell out the O2 in London, Wembley Arena, not the stadium of course, Wembley Arena. But the point being that Impact Wrestling was very popular over here in the UK. And then by the time 2015-16 came around, 2017, obviously with the chaos that was happening inside the company, those deals over here in the UK died, and it just it was very, very tainted, wasn't it? And it has a very tainted legacy. I think a lot of people around that period of time in 2016, the whole Billy Corgan drama with Dixie Carter and all of that stuff, a lot of people had given up on the company, mainly, I think, because they thought it wasn't going to survive. It turns out Impact Wrestling is like the cockroach in the apocalypse. Impact Wrestling will always survive. It survived longer than WCW, ECW. It's got history. I think a lot of people have said for a while that the most valuable thing about Impact Wrestling, of course, is its tape library, because at this point it's pretty extensive and it's got some pretty huge names on there. It's also got the final matches of Ric Flair and Mick Foley and Hulk Hogan. On their library. Actually, I'm just thinking off the top of my head as well. I was stumbling there. Does it have Mick Foley? Mick Foley appeared in WWE, didn't he? It wasn't the final match for Mick Foley. Tangent. I'm having a conversation with myself here. But the point being, Karl Anderson, Luke Gallows. It's a massive get for Impact Wrestling, and they're really starting to make strides. Even though they lost Tessa Blanchard this last week, they have a great roster at Impact Wrestling. They have arguably one of the best female rosters in the world right now. It's certainly level there with NXT and WWE. Their female roster is very strong, much stronger than AEW, I would say, without a shadow of a doubt. And they're improving their roster. Apparently, also, the people that were released by WWE in April, the first people to go to, most of them were Impact Wrestling. So, Gallows and Anderson, the deal's pretty much done for them to appear in Impact Wrestling. But also EC3, as I said, EC3, that's pretty much done. Obviously, the hints have been there the last few weeks on Impact Wrestling anyway, and also on social media. So immediately, you've got EC3, Gallows and Anderson coming into Impact. That makes the roster a lot stronger. They're stars. They're criminally underutilized by WWE. If you just think of Karl Anderson and Luke Gallows here, I mean, Karl Anderson, people forget that people at the time when AJ Styles was in Japan, a member of the Bullet Club, along with the Bucks and all of that stuff, people assume that Kenny Omega or whoever was the leader of the Bullet Club. Wrong. Incorrect. After Finn Balor left New Japan and came to WWE, of course, he was the first leader of the Bullet Club. After he left the Bullet Club, the second leader was Karl Anderson. People forget about that. And just think he was always, a second fiddle. He wasn't. He can talk, he can work. He was never given the opportunities that he should have been in WWE. And the same goes for Luke Gallows. Luke Gallows, of course, has been everywhere. He does have history with Impact Wrestling and TNA. He was in the original Aces and Eights. He was known as Doc. That is why when he went to New Japan, he moved the WWE and Impact names together and became Doc Gallows. But so it'll be interesting to see if he comes in as Doc once again or Doc Gallows. We'll have to see. They've also teased, D'Lo Brown was on Impact Wrestling last week and teased the return of the Aces and Eights at Slammiversary or in an upcoming edition of Impact Wrestling. I would think that that's going to be the main focal point of having Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson in Impact Wrestling. I think they're going to use Aces and Eights as a sort of hybrid version of the Bullet Club. Of course, they don't own the rights, the names, or anything of the Bullet Club. That is exclusively New Japan promotional material, New Japan trademarked. But I think they might use the Aces and Eights to basically do their version of the Bullet Club. Now, originally, I don't think Aces and Eights in TNA was meant to be a rip-off of the Bullet Club or anything like that. If anything, it was a rip-off of Sons of Anarchy. Eric Bischoff was in charge at the time. We know his love and fascinations of all things motorcycle. Sons of Anarchy, by the way, great show. If you haven't watched Sons of Anarchy, go and watch it. The first few seasons are great. Like any TV show, it tails off at the end. That's just TV, unfortunately. Not every show can be a Breaking Bad, unfortunately. I might get some heat for that in the comments as well. But I think Aces and Eights was just meant to be a rip-off, of course, of Sons of Anarchy, and it was a fun stable. I was a big fan of Aces and Eights. I just thought it was booked horribly. They just lost all the time. But I enjoyed Aces and Eights. I enjoyed their entrance in the Impact Zone. I enjoyed their entrance music. It was a time TNA just started to go on the road as well, which regardless of how badly executed and poorly executed it was the right idea. If you've heard the horror stories that Bruce Pritchard said on Something to Wrestle about them deciding to go on the road and then being told 2 weeks later we've booked this arena, I was like, whoa, I thought that was going to be 6 months' time. That's the chaos that was going on at TNA at the time. But Aces and Eights was a great gimmick, a great stable. So if they want to bring it back, it's got some name to it. You can have a leader like Karl Anderson in there. Doc Gallows, of course, was part of the original the original club, and they can bring in D'Lo Brown. I'm not sure if they'll bring in the likes of Mr. Kennedy or Mr. Anderson back to it, or Wes Briscoe or Garrett Bischoff or Mike Knox, or Nux as they called him in the Impact Wrestling. I'm not sure if they'll bring those lights back. They might even bring Bully Ray back. I don't know his status with Ring of Honor at the moment. I'm not sure if it's an exclusive deal. He can't appear on anyone else's programming. Of course, he was the president of Aces and Eights. We know that Devon isn't going to come back as he's currently under contract with WWE as a producer. But Bully Ray could come back, and then you've got a stable with the likes of Luke Gallows, Karl Anderson, Bully Ray, D'Lo Brown. That's a pretty fun stable, and they're just doing their stick. They're talking the way they talk. That was the thing in WWE. They were never given the freedom to really perform and act what made them so popular in New Japan. The funny, comedy, the creativity. We know in WWE, if you've got the slightest comedic bone or the comedic timing, you are going to be given a prop, and it's going to be something stupid. John Moxley said as much on Talk is Jericho before, isn't it? Suddenly it becomes a prop. You have to wear a gas mask. You have to get injections. If you were Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson, you were calling people nerds and dressing up as doctors, walking around with stethoscopes. All of that stupid stuff. That's what I mean, stupid stuff. Which is just not them. It's not them. They're cool. They're cool heels. They're funny, cool heels. That if you listen to any of their podcasts or any of their appearances on anyone else's podcast, they are great. They're funny. They're interesting, and they're comical, and they're good in the ring. That's what made them so great in New Japan. So hopefully that's able to translate over in Impact Wrestling. Like I said, I certainly will be paying a lot more, or have been paying a lot more attention to Impact Wrestling recently anyway. But the signings of EC3, the signings of Gallows and Anderson, they're doing a bit of a reboot anyway at Slammiversary. Their presentation's great. You've got Ken Shamrock on the show as well. It's a fun show at the moment, and it's a great roster. So maybe this is an opportunity of a bit of a rebirth for Impact Wrestling. They've been slowly winning over fans the last few years on social media and in professional wrestling circles anyway. So I think this is another step, and I think it's a great signing. I think it works for both parties. Obviously, Impact Wrestling getting two great wrestlers. Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson are getting an opportunity on a relatively large stage, not obviously a huge stage, but Access TV brings in some viewers to rebuild their career and absolutely, show WWE what they weren't using and what they were missing. You got to remember, these were two names that were very, very surprising to hear released in April. So I think they've got a point to prove. They'll have a chip on their shoulder. They'll kick all sorts of ass in Impact Wrestling, and then when the opportunity's there, they'll also work dates for New Japan. And I think it's a big get for Impact as well, because you have to factor in the AEW part of this. AEW was the likely destination, most people thought, for Impact, for Gallows and Anderson. A lot of people thought they'll go straight into AEW. Obviously, we know the strength and depth of the tag team division there. Do we need to? I'll rattle it off, actually, might as well. You've got the Young Bucks, you've got the Lucha Brothers, you've got Santana and Ortiz, you've got FTI, you've got Private Party, you've got Jurassic Express. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. You've Blade and the Butcher. The names just come to me. Every 5 minutes now, I'll just rattle off another name. Another tag team, Natural Nightmares. See? It'll keep coming. So their tag team division is so strong, and there's such a focus on tag team wrestlers. I forgot the tag team champions as well. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. I told you, this is what happens. It's just going to be playing on my mind now for the next 5 minutes. But their tag team division is so strong. There is such a good presentation there and such a focus on that. A lot of people thought, well, Gallows and Anderson are definitely going to go to AEW. But actually, I think it's probably the right thing for them not to go to AEW, to be honest, because that division is so stacked and there is so many bodies in there that I think it would benefit for them to go to an Impact Wrestling and have more of a spotlight on them than maybe they would have in AEW. They might get slightly lost in the shuffle just due to the caliber of tag teams there and due to how many tag teams there are there at the moment. I just think maybe Impact Wrestling is the better choice for them, and maybe they wouldn't have got the New Japan out deals that they would have got, that they've gotten in Impact Wrestling. We know some contracts in AEW do have that, the likes of Brody Lee, all of the EVPs, Jericho, Moxley, etc. I don't know if AEW would have maybe thought Gallows and Anderson were slightly worthy of that. Again, that's hypothetical. I don't know. I don't even know if Gallows and Anderson did have negotiations with AEW. We'll have to see. But I think right now it's the right choice for Impact, and I think it's the right choice for Gallows and Anderson. So fascinated to see how they work in Impact, and I'll be watching, and that's more than I could have said a few years ago. But what are your thoughts on Luke Gallows and Karl Anderson? Pretty much going to Impact Wrestling. A deal is nearly done, apart from the signatures on the paper. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget and like and share this video, and subscribe to Wrestling News 365 as well. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms on the screen right now. That's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram. Or you can go to WrestleNews365.com for all the very latest news, updates, opinions, all of that good stuff. It's at WrestleNews365.com, so be sure to give there a visit too. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.